4 years. That's how long it's been since I reviewed Yakuza 1. Back then, it wasn't cool to like Sega. You know, I really like Sega. Apparently, and I also spoke way slow in an attempt to hide accent. It's a pretty big fucking series with some pretty big fucking games. It wasn't a big series at all at the time too. Outside of my highly inconsistent review series, the only ones publicly singing its praises were Hyperbit Hero and the Zaibatsu. Sure, there were some whispers here and there, but overall I think the series was kinda hurt by A, its reputation as a Japanese GTA whilst not being that at all, and B, it starting off on the PS2 and being up against some very, very stiff competition. That ain't to say it couldn't hold its own like it rightfully should have, but the PS2's library is so fucking saturated with massive, huge, influential classics and super secret, can't believe shit's this good level hidden gems that it was bound to join the ranks with those rather than being out there with the MGS's, Kingdom Hearts's, and GTA's. Since then, though, Yakuza 5 actually came out, which got some buzz going just because so many people were kicking up a fuss about it. And then, in an almost inverse of what happened to the first two games on PS2, Yakuza 0 hit the, at the time still rather scantily gamed PS4, where through word of mouth and many a memeable screenshot it soon got the series put under the limelight. Add a spicy as fuck wolf essay to the mix, some cheeky little writing on games videos, and positive review scores up the ass, and boom, you got yourself a hit. Even though, despite the fact that with Zero they were already kickstarting the process of saying goodbye to these characters people like me and many others had been with for years. Like me, Sonic the Hedgehog. Please miss me. Thing B, game series don't end. Mario, Final Fantasy, Call of Duty, GTA, Zelda, Sonic. It's generally expected that video game franchises just more or less continue until infinitum lest they be left to fizzle out. And while Yakuza will continue on past 6 with the very different 7, they still did something many long-running game series are too cowardly to do. That is, doing away with your long-running main cast and general gameplay style. And to do that, you'd really need to have a fitting goodbye. Like maybe you show some sides to certain characters never shown before. Maybe you actually try to round up all loose ends. Maybe do big references and heart tugs to games past. Perhaps polish the gameplay up to such a degree that it's the best it ever could be. Or maybe you first turn back the clock to Japan during the neon-laden, breakdancing, big clubbing, money-gunning 1980s and show off the weighty, meaty origins of our leading lads.
Money, bitches, expensive suits, sultry neon glow, and a hefty dose of fuck you attitudes.
Putting the Yakuza back in Yakuza, if you will. Because as crime-heavy as the series has always been, it's been hard to deny how goddamn nice everyone always is. Sometimes the games will take a step back for some reflective self-awareness like, are we the baddies? But in the end, the hearts of gold will always take dominance. So why not take a few more steps back? Make Kazuma a more ruthless, hot-headed young child struggling with his Yakuza identity, and Majima not quite the insane, flamboyant, violent nut he had been up to this point past this point. Origin story that bitch, and built the gameplay around it by having the combat be far more sloppy and violent, filled with adolescent vigor and stupidity, and the open districts and activities fueled by money and back alley grime. For instance, in Yakuza 1, the Kamurocho district was quite dirty, filled with drunks, punks, and bums, crime running amok, and the nice park area turned into one giant homeless shelter. But over the course of the series, you see it cleaning itself up due to Kazuma's gang, the Tojo clan, investing more and more money into it and taking care of the more ruthless crime bosses. Suddenly, you start seeing less of these baggy goons and more suit and ties, less dark sleeves and garbage and more daylight shopping and cafes. The park becomes a big business area as well, with a giant skyscraper and mall, and the homeless find shelter and get cleaned up and helped out by folks like Seijima and Akiyama. You really see this district grow into something better, and not entirely because it's gentrifying the OG inhabitants away either, given how closely the clan gang works with all of them at least. But now we've turned back the dial, so right in the first cutscene you see an angry, bloodied up Kazuma stepping on a muddied paper puddle talking about redevelopment plans to make Kamurocho better. Damn, talk about fucking subtlety. Shit's way grimier than it ever was too. There's money going around for sure, but it's sleazed up, drunked up, hookered up alley vomit money. The LCDs and LEDs of modern times have made way for old-timey light bulbs and hot, steamy neon. The pavements aren't even remotely as clean as they would be by modern Japanese standards, boasting literal, actual trash piles by the dozen, and just the social vibe of it too, with the pushers being pushier, the hostesses sleazier, the punks punkier, and the alleys dingier, all converging to the point where 80s Kamurocho is giving me straight up Kowloon and Wall Market vibes, which it uses to show off the history of how this place got to where it is in Yakuza 1. I mean, it's never really addressed as strange at all, but it is pretty hecking weird how a gang of hobo squatters can occupy literally an entire flat in the middle of a busy district, or stank up an entire park undisturbed, or build entire communities in the sewers and run gambling shit and cage fights from abandoned metro stations. The underworld is quite literally under the world, which I've always kind of chalked up to being more of an urban fantasy sort of thing. Not something you were ever meant to question or get much context for, and yet most of Yakuza 0 is centered around real estate wars, in which people get bought, bribed, screwed, or kicked out of whatever property they may have, no matter how high their status be. It's also directly mentioned how common it is for ex-Yakuza to end up homeless, which is a path often seen in the other games as well, but is extra highlighted here, given that you see the powers that be fall to the corruption and scare tactics birthed in the wake of Japan's economic boom. And so, suddenly, those massive hobo gangs start making sense. How Kamurocho can be part big dick massive business and part turbo sleaze and poverty in such a small concentrated place. As it was essentially the inverse in how it came to be, i.e. instead of the money and leadership making things better, shit just got gentrified here to Kingdom Come. And I don't know, that doesn't sound like any kingdom I'd like to be living in. Gummies aside though, I do love this place. I've built up strong connections to it over the years, like, oh yeah, this nightclub next to the Sega Center where I got my ass kicked a bunch of times. Funny how it's nothing special now aside from the secret sewer entrance escape route motorcycle battle. Man, I remember I took down one of those giant mega zombies here with a tank, or when it literally rained money that one time, or how often I climbed the epic skyscraper that'll one day be here. Or the cute boy advert parking lot, home to many a sketchy fight, now being home to my hobo homie teaching Kazuma the skills he would have used in them. Or, dude, this fucking ramen shop where I helped out the owner once. Or the batting center, man. It's just goddamn. From epic RE4 gore fights to baggy punk beatdowns, I've built up so many memories and associations with every shop, corner, street, alleyway, or park. Chiefly achieved through how well this series calls back and builds up each one of them gradually over time, slowly giving meaning to all of them. So, it's quite strange how Zero very intently subverts that by not building upon what one knows to be here, but by adding to the foundations yet laid bare. Like this bar, for example. The first game more or less starts within it, and it's a recurring location throughout the series. It is our bar, pretty much. However, while it is that due to said recurrence, it also just kinda like introduced as just that, essentially starting off as their bar. So, seeing the origins here of how Kazuma gets introduced to it, how he starts bringing a few homies over and begins to rely on it as an unsafe retreat, it's very minor, but it just adds a little bit of emotional heft retroactively, making one reflect upon it with future past fond vibes, now being just a bit more meaningful at their core. Not to mention that, again, the whole through line of the story is the redevelopment of the district, so many key locales won't be there as they're either being built or are still being planned. It really felt like being able to walk around in the past of your hometown or some shit, spotting all of the differences and glowingly reminiscing at how some things stayed the same. And all of this goes for the people within it too. Nishiki, who was the Virgil Shadow Vegeta Gary rival in the first game, starts off being Kazuma's buddy, and then jail time happens and suddenly he bad. It gets built up well by the time you reach the end, ready to beat his ass, but you didn't really get much time to vibe with how close they truly were or why they were either. And here you do, cause he's your Otacon Krillin Tilsbrock in this game, sticking with Kazuma through and through, being the only motherfucker out there who truly sees him as the rough heart of diamond he actually is. Going with on shopping trips and hanging out at the batting center, doing karaoke and bare chest fist fighting some boys, you for sure get a lot of weight to their friendship here, knowing what finna happen, especially as that Otacon character type usually don't transition to a Virgil like ever. Plus, you also get to see now dead dudes like Kashiwagi or douchebag Dojima getting a bit more screen time as their younger selves, which is very cool too. Now, like I said, the combat is a bit more clumsy than it has been in games future past. Kazuma is far more of a loose cannon, putting himself at risk at all times, nearly flinging himself out of windows or straight taking rusty pipes at top motor speed just to prove his manliness, only showing his hot-headed, insecure, impulsively young lack thereof as he fights so fast and reckless, homie roughhouses himself out of your control all of the time. Being much harder to keep in tow contextually, and even shit like the ability systems feel really basic yet kinda obtuse and stupid. Using money as a very raw catch-all currency rather than anything separate or more elegantly designed like EXP or CP. All of this is due to the bulk of his story being about him trying to find what it means to be a Yakuza and thus barking up all the wrong troubles getting in way over his tree. You could say that all Yakuza games are about that in a way, but even if that was fully true, he doesn't really ever lose his cool because of it, and here his insecurity most certainly leads to that, thus resulting in the window flinging and pipe dicking of previous mention. Dude even gets straight up put in his place here, which isn't really a thing Jotaro McKenshiro adult Kazuma would ever let happen. He is the place putter, you see, and in Zero you see him slowly gather enough confidence, i.e. raw fucking anger, to become that, which not only gives his gameplay a pretty satisfying sense of progression and context, but it overall also makes for a fun loosey-goosey feel in which the heat bar fills up faster than it ever did. He's literally more heated, gassed up, if you will. Not to mention that he can and will go full beast mode, letting him pick up items automatically, essentially smashing through a stage like a solid class cannon. They just really put a lot of thought into how to integrate the story's themes with the otherwise somewhat detached feeling combat sequences. And while that might make for a weaker game on like a pure contextual combat basis than say 5, it fits perfectly for what Zero do and is. Besides, it's also only half of it. So far, all you've seen is some Kazuma shit, some basic bitch Kamurocho shit, some two-eyed depth perception shit. Ha! Get out of here with that shit, man. It's fucking Majima time, bro. So Majima is easily one of the stranger characters in the series. In the zombie game, for example, he's the only one out there explicitly loving it. He's also always dressed like a back alley pimp and isn't exactly afraid to sometimes end up on the wrong side just for kicks. He's flamboyant, fights like a dancer, owns the largest, biggest business in Kamurocho, and speaks like he's always taking the piss. However, in Zero, he is but a humble, polite, well-mannered cabaret owner in the jazzy Sotenbori district of Yakuza 2 and 5 fame. In 2, this place contrasted with Kamurocho greatly due to its far more colorful lighting, smoky jazzy mist, rowdier nightlife, canals, and its generally less stuck-up people, as Osaka is also known to be IRL as well. But due to the influx of 80s money present here and past, it's actually the classier area. Or, you know, classy in that high street life sort of way. There's still trash garbage everywhere and the light pollution is way over the top, but there's also these big cabaret clubs all over the place and fancy eateries, and the people seem to be visibly having fun rather than puking and drunking as they do in Kamurocho. And it's exactly that raucous meets class atmosphere that makes it the perfect setting for 80s Majima. Because, you see, his fighting style is way interesting given that it makes you question his character, seeing as the weird, voice-up-pitching psycho you know from all of the other games only comes out in the heat of battle. During story, he's all class, serious business, and polite to a T, but the moment he starts fighting, it's as the sensei grandpa says, the demon breaks loose. Suddenly, you catch him yelling and screaming and making weird psychotic faces. His heat moves are also far more brutal than Kazuma's, which says a lot. Like, Kiryu will smash a dude into a wall and punch him a few times. You know, nothing special. Very regular day-to-day stuff. But Majima will straight bash his face into a wall repeatedly, or fucking baseball bat smash him, or literally punch people off of a bridge. All while wearing a face that says, "Stay the fuck away." And what's funny too is that he learns a lot of his signature moves here. The whole dancing shtick, for example, is something he only gets into after seeing some hip 80s breakdancers go at it. And the weapons he so likes carrying around are inspired by this legendary Chinese swordsmith whom he catches fucking up a goon. It's a neat little thing getting to slowly build up his actual move list like that. And overall, his gameplay is a great showcase of the reserved duality he's forced to maintain. Thing is that a lot of Majima's adventures consist out of him sweet-talking his way through some shit, as opposed to Kiryu who brute forces raw emotion style. Majima will visit a hostess bar only to end up having a friendly chat with the owner, but Kazuma goes back to base to ask the boss man of his clan a thing, only to end up beating the shit out of everyone there, ending it with someone losing their fucking pinky. It's a game of contrasts, this one. Contrasts between future and past, Kamurocho and Sotenbori, and Kazuma and Majima. Contrasts which are also all opposites of how shit be in the other titles, thus fleshing things out proper by showing you sides you'd have never gotten otherwise. I guess they easily could have fucked that up, as origin-type story prequels often do, by, say, giving far too much baggage to unimportant bullshit based on fan garbage and retcons, but that ain't the vibe I'm getting here at all. I mean, with Kazuma for one, it's all kind of new, and not really all that earth-shatteringly important. It's just a story about him trying to clear his name and learning about who he be with all the drama and posturing that can ensue. Serving primarily to just make you appreciate the guy a bit more, which sets up 6's bookend really fucking well. And Majima does have a bit more of a full-on origin story, but it's one that puts the majority of the weight on what is essentially also brand new shit, while simply giving depth to the little bits of his story already established. You know, that whole thing about the big gun shoot gone fucko ending up with his buddy Seijima in jail and him rough in a dungeon. Back in 4, they kinda presented it as Majima just fumble finding his way after that, waiting for the boy to get free, but as is revealed here, he was actually put under a type of house arrest. Or I guess more like district arrest in Sotenbori, where he is forced to behave like a good boy and make big bank running the cabaret to repay for the thing he did wrong, which if I remember correctly he didn't even really do. And boy howdy does he ever get put to the fucking ringer by the RSTs. I first figured I'd need to bring up a bunch of specifics, spoil the whole story and blow the full load, but I really don't need to, as the setup for a storyline alone should tell you more than enough. You see, aside from basically being forced to live a life that isn't his, he's also asked to assassinate someone. Someone whom he comes to find out he really does not want to assassinate. though some other dudes do, and so he gets some big fat emo heavy drama, as he is forced to protect the one he is meant to kill from his enemies, associates, future friends, and perhaps even himself. All the while not even really knowing why she needed to die in the first place. All of this coming with a fair dose of heavy choices and tough situations that give a lot of meaning to his psychotically lackadaisical demeanor of past-present games. Suddenly, he is not just some goofy motherfucker with a kinda sad backstory, but this really deep-ass character who I look back on rather differently now. Almost as if his wackier side is just a coping mechanism, or as if him cutting the bullshit from time to time having far more serious connotations than him just wanting to talk one-to-one. Add to that how all of this gets tied back into Kazuma's story both in Zero and in Future, and you end up with an amazing tale of contrasts that does not muddy backstories or overcomplicate lore, but does manage to reward those who've stuck with these two and their towns for years by throwing in heaps of additional world building, tons of subtle nods and callbacks and memes, and in this case also some great ass emotional heft, shining a great new light on this series as a whole, but also on the first game specifically. And so, with us back at the beginning, we can finally move towards the end. Yakuza 0 is part of the Yakuza 10th Anniversary project, an effort meant to, of course, celebrate the series and all that had become, but also, most definitely already to the devs, a bit of a final hoorah for what they knew was building up to the big finale game the year thereafter. That game, though, needed a new engine. 0 was actually running in the same engine as Yakuza Kenzan was, released all the way back in 2008, so it was about time for an upgrade. Only problem is that they were also reusing tons of assets for, I'm pretty sure, even as far back as the first fucking game, with certain interiors carrying over from 1 to 2 to 3, i.e. the HD engine, and I don't think those could have been dropped into something so new and frisky. A good call then would be to remake Yakuza 1. I mean, it's basically the weakest game in the series in terms of its raw gameplay given how horrendously slow the combat was, and for the Western release, they also did an entire dub with celebrity actors to...
So, does your father know what you're doing?
What? Of course not! Are you fucking retarded?
I'm not as stupid as you.
Well, let's just say varying results, so hey, yeah, fair enough. Get that new foundation going. Only that's not what they did. Kiwami is instead more of a mod for Zero that uses its battle system almost wholesale whilst drag and dropping entire cutscene rigs into it. Yeah. I'll cover it in full sooner or later. I'm doing this stupid little sub-series on remakes, which currently includes 2 whole videos and will soon contain videos for Final Fantasy VII-R and thus also Kiwami 1 and 2. But going by what I've read prior to playing, YK1 seems to be a better game in almost every way, but also it retcons some shit and adds some stuff to tie it into Zero more betterer, and then even this whole ass goofy ass mode revolving around Majima, which may or may not stray a bit outside of the scope of intent of the tone of the original, maybe. Regardless, it was a good move, given that Zero unexpectedly sold like hotcakes outside of Japan, and so it could actually serve as a far better step into the series proper than the OG at this point ever could for most people. And hey, it also made for a great little refresher on the humble beginnings of one Kazuma Kiryu and the grimy little district that once was Kamurocho. Because the more you can keep that shit in mind, the harder Yakuza 6 will hit. The ending of Yakuza 5 left things in a bit of a state, with the entire status quo being upheaved and Kazuma sent to jail for 4 years. Now, fresh up out the jail, he finds everything to have changed as time has moved on big time, with future space technology being far more integrated into the new engine, Chinese gangs having taken over and rebuilt entire parts of Kamurocho, physics now being a thing, and Haruka, aka the girl he had been raising as if his daughter since game 1, in a coma after a mysterious accident with naught but a big fat poo baby left in her unawake. And so, to flee this scary new old world and also to find the would-be father of the child, Kazuma travels to the overwhelmingly old-school town of Onomichi, with fishermen and traditional little shops and a brand new cast of cool new buddies. Kamurocho, though, really did change a lot. in a way far more significant than it ever had in previous entries. Like, entire bits of the layout is different, there's tons of new stores, staple places have closed up shop, and the way everything looks and works has changed too. Like the menu designs that had otherwise been entirely consistent in every game, the fact that you now have autosaves, the food being an entire integrated mechanic that I shall explain later because pacing, and even just like how wide some of the streets are, or how the lighting works, or certain other visual effects and filters and shaders, it all just feels a smidge diff from how it was, due to all of it being rebuilt from scratch. And I'll be real, I felt kinda lost at first. A lot of the familiarity the series had built up is lessened a bit here. Just as Uncle Kazuma comes out of the jail after nearly 4 years feeling like an old man out of his element in a rapidly evolved world, the player too will feel out of their element, certainly at first. It's such a brilliant little contrast to the almost overtly traditional Zero, not even introducing any new places. Especially with the double whammy that is Kiwami taken into account as well, the game really feels, even on the most subtlest, minorest of levels, like a big dumb goodbye where Kazuma can finally cool down and chill at the one place that literally hasn't changed an inch. First, having gotten a big old taste of how things used to be from way further back than you'd ever even thought you'd see, only to now confront you with the present and what'll no doubt be this series its future. Damn. No quest too daunting for Grandpa. Onomichi though really is one rural ass bitch. Shops close early, there's like zero nightlife, Kazuma ain't the only old person here either neither, and it just has that musky, crickety, tulip mech Persona 4 Yomawari vibe about it. With the buzzing of the old wiring and lighting drowning out the cicadas as the sole rogue vending machine supplies the light at night. It's a mega different vibe from anything the series has really done before, with the Okinawan town of 3 being the most similar, though even that had a bit of hustle and bustle, and this really is fucking Grandpa Kaz's retirement vacay with ultra violence and baby. You know, as you do. Hell, even the local Yakuza are just some small-time goofy goons, serving as more of a comedic relief than they are all... Oi. And dude, my dude, it has a fucking cable car. But yeah, it's a very old school traditional hillside town. Got the wee train zipping by, the power lines on wazoo, all of the tiny little steps and wee windy pathways and one of those Shinto graveyards, tons of wooden houses with the slidey doors, and overall just a really great ass ambience that make a boy go. Now of course, there is a darker underbelly, which is where most of your typical Yakuza drama will come from. But on the whole, it's just a much chiller, nicer, friendlier place fit for the grandpa-ass protag of this now granddad-ass series. I mean, this place legit has very few random encounters too, so fights tend to feel like they have a bit more meaning to them. Plus, it ain't like you need to fight hundreds of dudes anymore either, cause of the now super well integrated and rewarding everything. Okay, maybe a change in background music will be good now. So, due to the new engine, the feel of the combat is a tad different. It does still build upon Kazuma's regular old moveset as well as what he did in Zero. Dude's old now and kinda sick of people's bullshit, you see, so there will be a bit of that hot-headedness put back into the combat with things like auto-picking up items as you smash a la beast mode, but the way the heat works is wholly different. There's hilarious physics that add a fair bit of dynamism, and as a whole, things just flow a lot more fluidly and natural. For instance, not only are heat moves far easier to trigger because of them not always requiring pixel-perfect contextual prompts like needing to align oneself one way on a down due to trigger a cutscene of you kicking him, as you can just kinda do that now and maybe do it again and maybe launch him into other motherfuckers because physics. Anyway, heat in general is less of a binary state, whilst also being that even more so. Like, Okay, your bar balls will fill up as they still do, but as I said, you don't necessarily waste a ball per contextual as the contextuals is less contexty. Again, more natural, shit tends to flow into the regular combat more. But it is more binary in that you can also hit a shoulder on him and trigger heat mode as if it were a type of witch mode devil trigger. From which mode you can then do more crazy shit like say the auto picking up of items of 0 or going full ora. Additionally, Kazuma's base moveset works so fucking well with the new physics. Dude was always one for big sweeping kicks, as he even does one on the cover at the first game, only back then, you either wouldn't hit shit or you just tumble bumble a sole standalone boy. But in 6, enemies bump into each other, so that very same big sweeping kick can start dominoing, and 0-style bike bang can start musoing, knocking over entire rows of boy crowds. And I really fucking like this. It can look kinda goofy, sure, when objects start wigging out for sure, but on the whole, I'd argue that it makes the combat feel a bit more grounded and realistic. Well, by Yakuza standards anyway, whilst also keeping in line with and building upon what the past games did. I mean, you quite literally don't get transported away anymore. Fights just happen where you were and leave you off where they ended rather than load leaving you back to where they began. Same way you can enter restaurants free of loading screens now, which is a great incentive to actually do anything really, no less than adding to your deeply integrated ability system, giving you EXP for various individual skill categories and ability purchases for doing shit like eating, helping people, playing games, and of course, beating ass. All gameplay elements essentially flow into each other now, which is a more modern and mature evolution of, hey, holy shit, it's the game's themes, woo! Everything you do here feels like it matters and makes you grow, which is the polar fucking opposite of how shit was in 0. The reliance on everything needing money there meant that one could often fall short even in case of big money, and especially as the game went on, I rarely unlocked new skills. Which fit the game. It is a tale about bumbling young rough diamond amateurs living in big money, and its systems, like its combat, fairly reflected that. But in 6, Kazuma has matured a lot. Dude knows what the fuck he's doing and above all goes into this game with about as clear as a focus since 2, i.e. find baby daddy. And so the gameplay here reflects that too. Not trying to be a billion things at once with all of the styles or characters or districts we've been seeing in the last 3 games, but instead just giving you the most fleshed out, modernized, concentrated extract of how the gameplay was at its pure core as of Yakuza 1. It's like, sure, there's a bit of screen tearing going on and the physics might be a bit hilarious at times, but I mean, old age always brings about at least a few wrinkles and back pains, you know, and even if that granddad's a bit out of his element, it's hard to deny how old and wise he is in regards to what he's doing and has been doing for ages now. And that's kinda what both this game and Kazuma and the plot is and are about. Hitting your peak right before passing off the torch to an already raring to go new generation, which you see reflected in tons of minor details. For example, the first side quest I found here wasn't anything too wacky or crazy. It was instead about this little girl who's a fan of Haruka's. She was a pop idol in 5 where you got to play as her, running around Sotembori doing promotional drives, dance battles, and fan meetups. And this girl just offhand mentions her handshaking her hand off-screen admiring Haruka at one of those fan meetups in Osaka. That's like a really small thing that suddenly made me feel a sense of involvement and responsibility for this otherwise irrelevant NPC. Shit's neat, and even that aside, it serves as almost a capstone for an arc started in a past game that you didn't even know was arcing, which is one of those things that this game keeps on doing. Like, you'll bump into a side quest homie from Zero, now all old, with a son who do new side quests here, passing off his torch good. You also meet Saigo again, i.e. the wacky military guy from 4 and 5, trying to whip the new generation into shape, whom he feels are not ready for the world as harsh as the ones these boomers went through. Very thematic. You also get to meet the homie from Stardust again, who's literally the first dude you befriend in Yakuza 1, who now talks about some shit I'll get into in a bit. The dojo owner from 4 also returns, who's now way into bodybuilding at this super cool new modern personal trainer based gym, mainly because he couldn't maintain his dojo as property prices rose, and more people sought shit like said gym over the more old school traditional martial arts, which also ties into the game's overall shtick really well, and again ties up a character arc and world building bit in a way that you didn't even know you needed, and just, man, this game hooks its way into the past using the lens of the future and present really goddamn well. Like, a big part of this series is hostess bars, right? Because they're a staple in Japanese red light districts. In Zero, they did something kinda neat with them by taking place at a time where the modern incarnation was beginning to form. You even get to run one of the first ones in Sotembori as a side minigame sort of thing. However, now, in the current year of 2016, I guess, these shits is dying out too, due to internet porn, camgirls, and chat rooms. This actually gets woven into the narrative as the potential baby daddy may have been working at a sexy bar, and so you go from club to club, meeting new folks and old folks like homie Stardust, and then slowly learn from all of them that the clubs have been shutting down or are being bought out by the new gangs and foreign mafias muscling in on the ever-changing and modernizing Kamurocho, with no place for the old-timey Yakuza garbage. And just like that, with the double whammy of 0 and 6, the game suddenly made me give a fuck about the Japanese nightclub industry. Like, what? It's small things like these, built up over the entire series, crescendoing with a meaning here and in 0, that is something quite special, I feel. Providing both a commentary on the state of Japan in modern day as well as a great-ass analogous story to what the aging, soon-to-be-retired Kiryu is going through. What's interesting as well is how the new guard is handled in contrast to this, because, I mean, Kazuma makes a lot of new friends in this game, way more than he usually do. And you spend far more time with them than you do most of the old folks too. They will be more often than not related to events or people from games past in some minor way, which helps to give an instant bit of initial shit, but overall they stand wholly on their own based on their qualities as well-written characters. In regards to the goodies, you see him go from, "Hey, who you, old man?" to, "Oh my god, you're the Kazuma Kiryu," and respecting him loads, getting that torch passed but also showing that the boomer ways might still have some fight left in him. And in regards to the baddies, it's all about rejecting the ways of Yakuza's old. They want rock back tattoos. They just see Kiryu as a relic. They don't mind selling out if it means money, and worst of all, they don't uphold the code. Kazuma has never killed. Never. No, really never. He wouldn't. It's against the code. But given that these dudes will stop at nothing to get what they want, it becomes quite evident that there might not be another option. I mean, they don't hesitate to use guns, which would otherwise be dishonorable. And they also screw over and torture and do tons of things that past villains also did, only like with some sort of like, you know, moral or flawed logic or whatever. Something that in the end could result in one of those scenes where both the final bad and Kazuma lie down exhausted and shirtless, as the villain gives one final monologue where you can kind of see their point of view. Shit hits, always, especially with the build-up where you round up the whole cast, get the boys together, and fight your way to the top of the Millennium Tower. Mowing down Dynasty Warriors levels of goons, clearing floor after floor after floor, burning through all of your healing items, losing your friends one by one as they need to tend to wounds or fight off an oncoming barrage, all so that Kazuma can make his way up for the final confrontation ending in some sort of realization. Only here you don't even get to the top. The three main bads are on a TV refusing to tell you where they are, all the while making you fight the only guy on their side who does fit the understandable, relatable bill. As they then, in the end, don't even give him the time to monologue, seeing as they kill off a character who had all the signs of you will live to see the Sunny Beach ending, as he, himself, is forced to commit seppuku under a fake-out ultimatum. And then your gang gets booted back to Serena, where they're just kind of left to, sit there. A complete and total inverse of the old guard ways that has been consistently hype since literally the first game. They really make you hate these guys. These games have always been good at doing that, but god damn, man, but by the time you get here, so many newly lovable characters have either been killed off or crushed to the point of defeat that it's hard not to want to see Kiryu beat them to death. Which is kind of what the series built up to, honestly. Not intentionally so, but unavoidably so. Like, you can only raise the villain asshole bar so high. They've done the Sasuke. They've done the Virgil. They've done the misguided, the corrupt gang of fuckboys, the all-powerful figurehead, and so they really couldn't have gone anywhere else than the pure evil. Just these irredeemable pieces of shit, cold, emotionless, cynical psychopath motherfuckers, willing to kill babies to get what they want, burn down entire neighborhoods, staple areas that you have connections to, defame and maim Kamurocho to a husk of what it once was and blossomed into in 5. Willing to off-screen do away with beloved long-term peeps you would have hoped to see return. Willing to shit on everything the series was, the rules it follows by, the vibes it had, just to get their ultimately frivolous desires that really don't even matter, because why the fuck would they? These dudes don't operate under the usual logic. These is kid booze. And so, shit's personal and a hella fitting final confrontation for Kiryu, i.e. what could be considered the series. They can't top this within these confines, nor could they really have pulled this off before, because they can't top this. But, as the best boy Akiyama says, think of your legacy. Think of the history you've etched into the streets of Kamurocho. In reference to Kazuma perhaps killing someone, which, yeah, hey, maybe we shouldn't cast away everything we are and forgo killing these guys. I was half expecting maybe a bit of relatability to happen here, but they also reveal that they straight have hold of the cops too, which they've used to kidnap Haruka and Child, and in what might be the most un-Yakuza ass move ever, they don't say, "If you want them to live, you must fight me, bro." They say, "If you want them to live, don't move an inch as we beat you to death." Which they then proceed to do until, of course, the good new guard, aka the homies with the torch, who also in a very un-Yakuza ass move aren't all killed off, show up to balance out the odds, thus allowing for a big final fight. Not gonna lie though, I really thought that at least half of these dudes would end up Rikiyat, but I guess it wouldn't be thematically appropriate if they did. I mean, we need these evil dudes to fucking cower. No honor means no backbone, cause Japan just be that way, bro, and god, was it fucking satisfying to fuck them up good. Not to death, neither, cause they've been bitched down more than enough pegs, even managing to still start gunning post-battle. Fucking bitch asses. And so, Kazuma and co. tear ass and haul butt, crescendoing to what may very well be the most deserved, bittersweet, happy ending for all characters this side of MGS4. Fuck of a whole lot better build up than that shit was too, showing off everyone back in their place where they needed to be, or always wanted to be, happier than they ever were. Except for Kazuma. For all I care, they could have ended the series then and there, full stop, and I would have been okay with that. But I do trust this team to torch up Yakuza 7 and onward into something just as special in its own way. Mainly because Sega has proven to me that they're really great at managing their long-running series. Yeah.